You're watching TAG TV. You're watching TAG TV.
Hello and welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a program that talks about breeding of terrorism and its impact on South Asian nations. Let's begin with the headlines first. Young blogger killed in Islamabad, state machinery suspected. IED blast in Kashmir, Indian security forces launch counter-terrorism action. Pakistan-sponsored terrorism criticized at multiple forums. Major success to investigative agencies in Easter Sunday blast case. And international delegates lay stress on resolving Afghanistan's problem. Anybody who dares to resist military-backed terrorism in Pakistan is rewarded with death. And it is not an overstatement but a well-established truth. 22-year-old Muhammad Bilal Khan had the same deadly fate written for him like many other revolutionary journalists in Pakistan who died for reporting against Pakistan Army and its notorious spy agency, the ISI. Bilal, a Pakistani blogger and journalist known for criticizing the country's powerful military, and ISI was hacked to death this week by unknown assailants who are suspected to have their connections with Pakistan Army. Here's a report.
मेरा नाम मोहम्मद बिलाल खान है। मैं एक तालिब इल्म और एक सहाफ़ी हूँ। इससे पहले कि मेरे देश के रखवाले, मेरे बावर्दी मुहाफिज, मेरे चेहरे पर सजी दाढ़ी को जुर्म ठहराएं, इससे पहले कि मेरी इस्लाम पसंदी मेरी दहशतगर्दी करार दी जाए, इससे पहले कि किसी गुमनाम सड़क पर मेरा लाशा फेंक दिया जाए, इससे पहले कि मेरे मरने के बाद मेरी लाश के ऊपर दहशतगर्दी का लेबल लगाया जाए, इससे पहले कि मेरे अहले खाना नेशनल टीवी के ऊपर आकर मेरे मरने के बाद मेरी गवाही देते फिरें कि उसका दहशतगर्दी से कोई ताल्लुक नहीं था.
The young boy in this video is Muhammad Bilal Khan. Bilal was a popular blogger and activist from Pakistan, killed by an unknown terrorist in Islamabad, leading all eyes of suspicion towards Pakistan's most powerful state, that is the Pakistan Army. Its hatred towards free speech once again spilled blood of a young innocent Pakistani boy whose only crime was criticizing Pakistan's powerful military and the spy agency Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI.
मेरे भाई को मोहम्मद बिलाल खान को इस्लामाबाद के अंदर बहुत ही ज़्यादा बेदर्दी से शहीद किया गया। मैं हैरान भी हूँ और परेशान भी हूँ।
On the day of his assassination, Muhammad Bilal Khan received a phone call asking him to come to a nearby forest. When he reached the woods, the terrorists used a dagger to stab him to death. Muhammad Bilal Khan's murder shows a fragile and a consistently declining state of freedom of speech in Pakistan. Khan, who had over 16,000 followers on Twitter, 48,000 on his YouTube channel and 22,000 on Facebook, was a freelancer journalist and a blogger. The timing of Khan's murder has triggered a wave of speculations pointing a role of country's army and ISI in the act, as only few hours before the murder, Khan had posted a tweet criticizing the appointment of General Faiz Hamid as the new ISI chief. Condemning the incident, experts across the forum have also blamed the deep state of army for Khan's barbaric death.
ISI is behind this murder. The Pakistani military establishment. Bilal is not the first one who was murdered. Before him, 71 journalists have been killed. And there are many missing also. And large number of other bloggers are also missing. Nobody knows, In fact, Pashtun Muhafiz movement is demanding, about the people missing, demanding, okay, where are the missing people? This is one of the demand of that movement. Anybody who writes against army or criticizes military establishment in Pakistan is generally being eliminated. We have seen in the past.
This is not the first time when a journalist or a social media activist has been killed in Pakistan for raising voice against military and ISI-sponsored terrorism in the country. The country's environment is turning extremely unsafe for the journalists as the extra-governmental institutions continue to intimidate them. According to the Impunity of Crimes Against Journalists Pakistan Report 2018, produced by the Freedom Network, at least 26 journalists were murdered in Pakistan during the last 5 years for their journalism work, but only the cases of 16 journalists went to court for trial, and of which the prosecution and trial was concluded in 6 cases only, and conviction handed down in 1 case only.
Pakistani military establishment is the most powerful institution of Pakistan. The elected government is subservient to it, and they decide, it acts as a guardian of Islamic State, and it acts accordingly, So all other institutions of Pakistan, including the parliament or legislature, is listen to army. What they say, they act behind it. But resentment is growing within Pakistan because state is failing, and a large number of people are coming out openly criticizing army for its anti-people activities,
The state of journalism in Pakistan is in shambles owing to a constant suppressive approach of the state. While the messengers of news are being strangulated to death at the whims of the authorities in Islamabad, the state has accorded an unwavering support to all those who have been fomenting terror. While Hafiz Saeed, the chief of a UN-proscribed terror group, is free to conduct lunatic religious gatherings, journalists and social activists like Bilal Khan and Salim Shehzad, who take the onus of freeing their society from terrorism, eventually get killed by the state machinery. Eight Indian Army personnel and 2 civilians were injured when terrorists triggered an improvised explosive device fitted in a vehicle near an army patrol in the Pulwama district of Kashmir. The terrorist attack was followed by a counter-terror operation by Indian security forces, where they neutralized 2 leading terrorists of Jaish-e-Mohammed. A report.
Indian security forces launching major operation against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir recently eliminated Jaish-e-Mohammed operatives Sajjad Maqbool Bhatt and Tausif. The 2 were the chief perpetrators in carrying out the heinous Pulwama terror attack that killed more than 40 Indian security personnel on February 14 this year.
It's a very big success. That car that was used in Pulwama, which targeted the CRPF convoy, belonged to Sajjad Bhatt. And thereafter, the security forces were looking for him for quite some time. But it was believed that after 15 days of hiding, he went and joined Jaish-e-Mohammed and became one of its senior commanders. His elimination gives a very clear indication that whoever wishes or takes up the gun and defies the sanctity and authority of the state, his end would be in the similar manner. It's a big lesson for those who wanting to pick up the gun against the authority and sanctity of the country, and also it's a huge setback for Jaish-e-Mohammed. Virtually the entire leadership of Jaish-e-Mohammed in the Taral area has been wiped out.
The February attack, which was orchestrated by Jaish-e-Mohammed, left the nation in shock and anger, while Indian security forces were given a free hand to strike the terrorists with full force. In the aftermath, Indian security forces launched a series of operations on terror operatives in Jammu and Kashmir and neutralized more than 100 terrorists since the Pulwama attack. However, the forces did sustain casualties on their side, but it did not deter them to achieve their aim of restoring peace and tranquility in the Kashmir Valley.
During this, unfortunately, we also lost 1 soldier in this operation. But I think it was important to have to eliminate these two particular individuals, because that will set the fear of God into the minds of all the other terrorists there, that the Indian army will eliminate you if you resort to such tactics. I think this will also be a big setback to the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and it will greatly impact upon their morale. These operations will continue regardless of the fact that the Indian Army too is suffering some casualties. We lost an officer yesterday. We've lost a man today, which is most unfortunate. But these operations will go on till the last terrorist is eliminated.
After sustaining a heavy blow to their terror network, Jaish-e-Mohammed and other terror outfits have now resorted to a new method to inflict casualties on civilians and the armed forces. There has been a rise in use of improvised explosive devices by the terrorists to carry out attacks in Kashmir Valley ever since Indian forces gunned down their top commanders. Shaken to the core after a series of encounters with Indian security forces, a few remaining terror operatives have either surrendered or seeking hideouts in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir.
Pakistan's multi-pronged design of backing terror outfits has become a subject of global criticism. Be it international conferences or delegation-level interviews, everyone seems to be talking about only one issue, and that is the threat of terrorism, which saw its rise from Pakistan and is now expanding its wings from this South Asian nation to all countries across the world. We bring you a report.
Terrorism poses the gravest threat to the people in Asia, and terrorists and their victims must never be equated, said Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar while addressing the 5th Conference on Interaction and Confidence Building Measures in Asia Summit in Tajikistan. His statement complemented the words of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who just a day before, addressing the SCO Summit in Bishkek, lashed out at countries which sponsor, aid and fund terrorism. In a veiled reference to Pakistan, the Indian Prime Minister asked such states to hold accountability for their actions.
Mr. Chairman, terrorism is the gravest threat that we face in Asia today. Many SICA members are victims of terrorism, and should be clear that terrorists and the victims must never be equated. SICA has always shown a strong commitment to combat terrorism and extremism and adopt a comprehensive strategy to combat them. Early finalization of the Comprehensive Convention on International Terrorism proposed by India is today even more essential, and we seek your support.
Time and again, India has made its stand clear on terror-sponsoring countries, signaling that no matter what, India will not hold talks with Pakistan until it stops housing terrorists and starts following the guidelines of United Nations to exercise complete restraint on terrorists who are comfortably living in various cities of Pakistan.
India's stand in all forums has been that terrorism is terrorism, a terrorist is a terrorist, and there is no good terrorist or a bad terrorist, and terrorism in all forms must be condemned. Along with that, terrorism sponsoring states or states where terrorism camps are held, where militants are being trained, where the terrorists are being trained by active connivance of the country's army, the country's intelligence wings and all, especially Pakistan, where the ISI has been setting up these camps first for the Taliban, then now for the Hizbul Mujahideen or the Lashkar-e-Toiba and all these militant organizations which are on the prescribed list. And this sort of a state, this sort of a country which is aiding and abetting terrorists should also be censured and banned by the world community.
Along with India, even top officials from the United States are urging Pakistan leadership to take relevant actions against terrorists operating in the country. Launching a sharp attack on Islamabad for having a laid-back attitude towards eliminating terrorists, LSG Wells, senior State Department official for South and Central Asian Affairs, told the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee for Asia, the Pacific and Non-Proliferation, the terrorist organizations such as Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed will continue to pose a grave risk to international peace as long as they are able to operate freely in Pakistan.
Whereas now Pakistan has utilized this training of these militants, the wherewithal, the entire money that is coming in from America to train the Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Taiba and other militants and send them into India. Now, these organizations that are there today, suppose we come to a point where India eliminates all these terrorists who are operating in India, what happens to those who are being trained in Pakistan? Where will they go? Today, when there is any attack, any militant attack in Brussels, whether in Paris, whether in Belgium, anywhere in the world, its threads are taken straight from Pakistan. Therefore, the world at large is now very, very cautious, because the threat of Pakistan being a terrorist sponsoring state is real.
The senior US official further stated that, I quote, "We continue to urge Pakistan's leaders to make good on their pledges to take sustained and irreversible actions against terrorist groups operating within the country's borders, which is necessary for the long-term stability and prosperity of the region." I unquote. Calling Pakistan's crackdown on terrorist groups just an eyewash, Ellis J. Wells said that even though Pakistan has detained some militants and seized their assets belonging to front organizations raising funds for terrorist groups, they are still reversible. The frequent statements issued by representatives of various countries on terrorism are indicative of the fact that the world is now going to exercise zero-tolerance policy on terrorism. In such a scenario, the statements can also be considered as a warning to terror-breeding countries like Pakistan, where the terrorists live under state patronage and simultaneously conspire to bring havoc in the world.
Easter Sunday bomb blast has completed 2 months and the investigations are still on to nab the terrorist. In a latest success to investigative agencies, 5 suspects linked to the Easter Sunday bombings in Sri Lanka have been repatriated from Saudi Arabia to the country. While the investigation of the bombing is still on, the revelations made during the probe is very disturbing. The case is throwing up troubling hints of how readily rage can cause terror even in a most peaceful region, a report.
A man accused of being one of the ringleaders behind the Easter Sunday bomb attacks that killed more than 250 people in Sri Lanka on April 21 has been arrested. Hayatu Muhammad Ahmed Milhan, a 29-year-old Sri Lankan national, was arrested in the Middle East and has been extradited to Sri Lanka. Interpol said Muhammad Ahmed Milhan and 4 other men connected to the bombings were en route from Saudi Arabia to the Sri Lankan capital Colombo. 2 months after Sri Lanka's Easter attacks, a massive web of disgruntled radicals has emerged, throwing up troubling hints of how readily rage can court terror. Sri Lanka's Criminal Investigation Department and Terrorist Investigation Division, leading the probe, has traced all 9 suspects to 2 jihadist organizations who are part of a less formal group of youth who had met on social media. The coordinated Islamist militant suicide bomb attacks on hotels and churches sent shockwaves throughout the Indian Ocean island state that had enjoyed relative peace since the civil war ended a decade ago.
Situation in Afghanistan has become a matter of concern for the entire world. Various representatives from the country are holding delegation-level talks at several forums seeking to resolve Taliban issue. In a bid to do the same, Afghanistan's National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib, addressing a conference in Russia, said that the nature of hybrid threats in the region are complex and multifaceted, and it requires a serious and collective action to fight them. Also, in a separate statement, India's permanent representative to the UN, Syed Akbaruddin, underlined the need to address the threats of transnational terrorism in order to establish genuine and sustainable peace in Afghanistan. We have a report.
Afghanistan has been witnessing a slew of attacks on security forces and civilians perpetrated by the Taliban terrorists ever since the Taliban insurgent forces were ousted in 2001. Afghan security forces, together with American partners, have been battling Taliban insurgents and terrorists linked to Islamic State which is trying to expand its influence in the turmoil-hit country. Recently, Afghan National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib, while addressing an international security conference in Russia, called out for a coordinated joint action against the menace of terrorism and stated that, I quote, "Only in Afghanistan at least 50 people pay the ultimate sacrifice in the fight against terrorism on a daily basis, which makes Afghanistan the country at the front lines of the fight against terrorism." I unquote. A rare disclosure by the Afghan National Security Advisor came as Taliban insurgents have intensified attacks during the current summer fighting season, inflicting heavy casualties on security forces and civilians. A few days ago, a suicide bomber detonated an explosive device near a police vehicle in Afghanistan's eastern city, Jalalabad, killing at least 3 officers, 6 civilians and injuring several others.
دلته وروره موږ ناسو دغلته لکه روزمره دغه غوندې بس یو درز وشو درز سره وروره چغې شوې هره خوا نه منډې شوې او ډزې شوې بس هر سړی د ډاره څوک داسې منډې چا داسې منډې وهلې او زخمیان او مړي او شهیدان هر څه پراته وو بس دغه مو ولیدله.
Afghans have long accused neighboring Pakistan of sheltering Taliban insurgents and sponsoring terrorist attacks in their country, but Islamabad rejects the charges and in turn alleges anti-state militants for using hideouts in ungoverned Afghan border areas to launch attacks. However, the accusations on Pakistan hold enough ground as the country has been censored globally at many occasions for its involvement in sponsoring and training dreaded terror outfits like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and several other Islamic State militant groups. In an open debate held recently on the situation in Afghanistan, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, underlined the need to address the threat of transnational terrorism in order to establish genuine and sustainable peace in Afghanistan.
We cannot ignore that groups enjoying support and safe havens carry out violent and terrorist activities from across borders. They cannot be allowed to negotiate from a place of advantage. The sanctuaries and safe havens provided to terror networks have to be addressed for genuine and sustainable peace. The terrorist activities of the Taliban, Haqqani network, Daesh, as well as Al-Qaeda and its proscribed affiliates, including the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, need to end.
As the country gears up for its 4th presidential elections in September, it remains pertinent to look forward to counter Talibani insurgents and their masters operating from across the border.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We will be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@ani.in.com. This is Surbhi Sharma signing off on the behalf of entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.